Once again, we're going to be speaking today about the green metal scenario and why are those very, very important metals to the transition perhaps struggling to take off. And all of this, of course, is against a background of geopolitical shifts. One of those, of course, is what is going to happen in just a few days from now when U.S. President Donald Trump takes office once again. We've heard quite a bit from him over the preceding months during the campaign about the energy transition, about U.S. energy dominance as opposed to just U.S. energy independence, and of course, the tariff situation. Is this a president that's going to really take China to task, and what, of course, that will mean for minerals generally? I want to kick off by posing that question to Bill Oplinger, if you would, just to weigh in on what you're expecting and what you see as the challenges ahead when it comes to the next 4 years.
Well, thanks for the question, Hadley. Just a little bit of background. I am the CEO of Alcoa, and would like to take a moment just to thank the Kingdom for another successful Future Minerals Forum. As we look forward to the next 4 years, we've been in business for over 130 years. We've worked successfully with all of the administrations over that 130-year time period. We will clearly try to understand what the tariff regime will be. We've had a tariff regime in place today. It's a 232 tariff that provides a 10% tariff on aluminum coming into essentially North America. And that has been somewhat disruptive of trade flows. But if we were to see massive tariffs coming in, especially that does not exclude Canadian metal, that could cause substantial trade flow changes in the industry. A significant amount of metal comes from Canada into the U.S. U.S. is structurally short aluminum, and if Canadians were not exempted from a 25% tariff, that would drive metal prices significantly higher in the U.S. and also could motivate metal coming from different parts of the world into the U.S., which would be completely disruptive to trade flows. So we'll be monitoring it. We'll be talking to the new administration and trying to make sure they understand the importance of having a competitive aluminum industry in the U.S. that also provides our downstream customers metal at a competitive price so that they can turn it into products for airplanes, automotive applications.
America's next energy secretary is doing his confirmation hearing today on Capitol Hill. You had a close relationship with the Biden team. What are you hoping to hear from him?
Well, we hope to hear from them that there will be an energy policy that is inclusive of many different sorts of energy in the U.S., that positions the U.S. for a long-term, low-cost energy solution. One of the things that we've seen in the United States is that much of the aluminum smelting capacity has left the United States because energy has not been competitive over the last 20 years. When I joined the company back in the early 2000s, there was over 20 aluminum smelters in the United States. There are only 4 left, and they are pretty marginal facilities as it is today. So we're hoping to see an energy policy that encompasses all different forms of energy and provides low cost and preferably sustainable energy for the future.
Joe, you can take a longer term perspective on this one. When you look at what's happened over the last couple of decades with regards to the movement on the energy transition and what we've seen over the last couple of years and specifically, how worried are you that we could potentially see a setback in the move toward net zero, just as a result of mineral prices, energy prices more generally?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the climate really doesn't... Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here at the conference. It's been great to be back in the Kingdom and see how it's been developing. This, I think, is really important, so thank you. On the topic of renewable and sustainable, I mean, see, if it goes to energy, you cannot escape the energy triangle. It's about affordability, sustainability, and security of supply. And I think every economy, every country needs to make its decision where it wants to be and have a long-term energy policy in general. So now, are we going to see a setback in terms of sustainability efforts? Well, time will tell. Time will tell. At the end of the day, we need to look at green and sustainability, that it needs to be economically feasible.
Yeah.
If you only depend on governmental subsidies, that changes in democracies, changes every 4 years. That's not the way on how you can build an energy agenda going forward. So I believe it's important that we time and again look at technology. How can we make sustainable energy, sustainable minerals, economically feasible? That needs to be the task.
Yeah.
And then people will make choices.
In this part of the world, and particularly in the global south, questions have been raised for a long time now about the tough decisions that Western governments will have to make going forward. Their citizens want access to cheaper energy, and that may just not be forthcoming given the constraints that we're seeing today. Joe, when you take a step back and look at what's happening, particularly in Europe, obviously what we've seen over the last several years with the invasion of Ukraine, that's put a major strain on European governments. Are they going to have to be a bit more honest with their citizens about what's achievable in terms of the energy transition versus what is realistic and how much that's going to cost?
Yeah, see, that's been one of the biggest challenges which we have seen in Europe in general and in Germany in particular, that people had, or governments have not been honest about what it takes, what the costs are for sustainable energy, for example. And if they always go back and say, well, we're going to help you afford the prices, that's a bad idea. You've got to actually go and say, what does it take? What innovation does it take? What technology does it take, to bring the costs down and not subsidize the prices? Now in Germany, we may have a new beginning coming up with the elections, but also the European Parliament, they need to become more practical, first of all, about what's possible. And what I really wish for the European Union is that they open their eyes and go to United States, go to the Middle East, and see what happens in this world, so that they understand, they are among communities, and not just a bubble on their own with very little growth. And that would be the recommendation I would give to those governments. Go out and see the world, and then come back and make a plan for your own country. I love my country, as everybody loves their countries. I don't want Germany or Europe become a museum of how it used to be a while ago.
Yeah.
And that needs to be our goal.
Do you anticipate we'll see Germany return to nuclear power?
Well, I mean, look, the voters will decide, obviously, as they have decided in the United States. The good thing about Germany is we don't have a divided country, because look, in the United States you have 50% of the people are happy and 50% of the people are unhappy. That may be also not a great idea. So in Germany, I believe we will have a more economically focused, a more liberal, and a less ideological government, which I think is a good start.
Yeah.
And if they talk to people, who've seen the world, companies which business model is export model, they can get a lot of input on how to make things work.
Your Excellency, that's not something necessarily you have a problem with here in Saudi Arabia, particularly with the Vision 2030, which is well on its way. I want to ask you specifically about the green metal transition and frankly, how that is all evolving here in the kingdom.
Okay, thank you. I think you have heard, thank you, Bill and Joe, for what they mentioned about the current challenges that we are having. And you have listened today in the morning from our ministers, Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources, talking about the belief of collaboration. And maybe others, they were looking about competition. And this is very important that in Saudi Arabia, we are looking to collaborate with everybody in order to resolve these challenges. And the other one is His Royal Highness, Minister of Energy, when he talked about where is the real issue and the tight supply of metals and minerals that is foreseen in the future and need to be looked at from yesterday. And looking at this as a vision, and we are in Royal Commission, for example, focusing to unlock these challenges. I think the previous session they were talking about one of the challenges, the infrastructure and utilities and connectivity and all of these issues that we in Royal Commission in all of our 4 cities we are focusing on since inception. While the cities were planned, it's planned for the future, and now we are reaping the benefit of all of our plans when it comes to environmental and the security of supply, and when it comes to environment, for example, which everybody talking about, Royal Commission is leading in managing its environmental production and if there is any pollution to happen, and therefore we were winning global prizes for our industrial cities as green cities. And we are also continuing the effort to enable the green metal manufacturing by working with Ministry of Energy and the initiatives His Royal Highness was talking about when it comes to green hydrogen that we are focusing to execute in Yambu industrial city. We are focusing into the carbon capture in both in the east and in the west. In the east, where to use it and inject it in the oil wells, and in the west, where we will use it for some downstream industries. We are also working into the recycling of waste coming from this industry, because there is a huge waste. I think Alcoa, you know, and in Ma'aden, partner, we are working with them now in multiple initiatives to find solutions with our universities and global institutions to really take care of all of this environmental issues, which is already by the public. It's known that metals and mining will have a negative impact to the environment. But I think to make it short, we have the great thing that we have a clear vision from our leaders that will enable us and the private investors in our cities to execute.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How do you anticipate, Your Excellency, that AI will impact that plan? Because at the end of the day, we need this energy to power the AI boom, but at the same point, as you say, enormous amounts of waste come from that.
I think that's a great question, and we are now, when you look at the AI, I think we can look at it as a great consumption of energy, which will make us face a challenge for other sectors, but also it will enable us to be more efficient in production and in managing our cities. We are have initiatives now. Already we have somewhat smart cities where we want really to go into having a smart city and adopting the Industry 4.0. We have a big program by Ministry of Industry to adopt it in the helping the industry, either in metals and mining or in the petrochemicals, to make them more efficient. And I think we will be now working with, I am heading actually a company owned by Public Investment Fund. I am heading the board, and we are working, actually the direction, I met with His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman twice for this, in order to take care of the environment and how we do the waste management and how we can utilize all the waste that we are generating. And already we are executing these plans either in mining and in other even public sectors.
I'd like to ask Nishad just to weigh in. I mean, when you think about green steel, almost a contradiction in terms, it would seem. But what is exactly the definition there of green steel? I mean, that is your name. And I want to understand from you just how, walk us through how you make that green.
No, that's a very good question, actually. You know, different people define the green steel in a very different way. As you're aware that the average, let's say, carbon generation in a steel is something close to about 2 tons, roughly on average. But on a process which is blast furnace process, it goes to 2.2, 2.3, more than that. Now, India has recently defined, for example, you know, the green steel, which is anything less than that, or they say that there are 5-star different categories which are there, the 5-star being 1.6, 1.5. But the world, for example, I mean, if you look at the process which is there, very common in Middle East, for that matter, you know, the electric steel making and the DRI, there we talk in terms of 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. Now, when we talk in terms of green steel, we really mean something close to about anything less than 0.7, 0.6, you know, that's the kind of thing which we talk about. And that, to my mind, is really a green steel. Although there is no definite definition which is there, which is accepted by the world, but that could be a reasonable number to kind of go for.
Yeah.
You know.
We talked a bit earlier on the panel about the politics of all of this. And obviously in the West, there is a certain narrative that perhaps the rest of the world doesn't necessarily subscribe to. In your mind, are we at risk of not achieving the goals of the energy transition simply because of the difficulty in supplying the energy that we need today, and particularly with the AI boom?
Yeah, I think it is, if you look at the good part in steel, for example, the good part is that the technology exists.
Yeah.
You know, how do we really go to that level? You know, that technology exists. And we know, for example, that if you want to go to levels like 0.7, 0.3, 0.4, something like that, we need to go for hydrogen. So that's one issue which is there, which we know very well. Now the question is hydrogen available today at prices which are something which can make meaningful change in the entire steel industry? Perhaps that's something where a lot of work is required to be done. And it's already happening in the world in some part of the, for example, you know that in Sweden there is somebody who is putting up a plant with fully hydrogen. Here we are in our own plant that we are wanting to build. You know, that's going to be fully built on based on hydrogen. So that's something which is really a very good news that, you know, there are organizations and companies who are prepared to go through that route. And there are also obviously there's a lot of support which needs to be done for the entire supply chain scenario. For example, you know, if you look at the supply, I mean, the hydrogen, if you look at the way that hydrogen is being produced, there is the electricity, there is a lot of electricity which is required to produce that.
Yeah.
Now, when you produce that electricity needs to be itself green electricity. And that's a lot of work which is already happening out there that, you know, that with that electricity, how do you really produce that? And then how do you cut down that cost, you know, bring it down to a level, you know, which is manageable in that entire scenario.
Yeah.
So that work is happening. There is still a lot of work which is required to be done. Whether we are already there, certainly not. There is a lot of work which is required to be done. But I think the direction in which we are moving, that's a very positive direction.
Yeah. When you think about that momentum, Dr. Al-Malki, talk to me a little bit about how you see this not just taking place in Saudi Arabia, but also globally, because the cover of the FT, the main story today was about the Chinese commodities boom is over, and lots of worried about momentum more globally in terms of demand. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I will talk about the steel industries because there is a demand. Things are moving forward, but it is slow. And what we see right now, as of today, there is a struggles in moving forward toward achieving these targets. And I would like to comment on the green steel definitions, because as of today, this is one of the difficulties in my view. That's why we are struggling to move forward. There is no clear agreed definitions for green steel? Is it less than 0.6? Is it less than 0.3? So this is an issue for not only the producer, but also for the developer of the technology to focus on optimizing a technology that is going to achieve that targets.
So if we're going to have green commodities, green metals, we should agree on what that actually means.
Look, whenever we talk about green metals, the picture is bigger than the producer only. So it's involved even the end user, the customers. Are they willing to pay the premium for this? Because achieving these targets is not going to be easy, and it's going to come at a cost. The producer margins right now, they are small and will not be able to cover all the green initiatives that gonna introduce to the existing industries and the new manufacturing facilities that's gonna be there. So having this into the pictures, we have to include everyone. It's also the lawmakers that's gonna accelerate this as well.
Yeah.
Technology developers, that's gonna, right now they are focusing on developing, achieving the target, not optimizing the process to lower the cost.
Yeah. This question I'd love to pose to both Joe and to Bill. The FT story on the idea that the Chinese commodities super cycle is over. How do you wrap your head around that in terms of your business strategy going forward? Bill?
Yeah.
So if I can take a moment to give an advertisement for aluminum. Aluminum is an integral part of the solution of a greener world. Aluminum provides lightweighting for automotive, aerospace applications, you name it. Aluminum's infinitely recyclable. So if you make aluminum today, it can be in the world for the rest of all of eternity. And it's got good conductivity. So aluminum is a big part of the solution for greener metals. As I then look at the actual market for green aluminum today, so while our properties of our product help green the world, there is actually a low carbon market for aluminum today. So over half of the metal that we sell in Europe as of now is considered low carbon aluminum. In that particular instance, we get a premium price of only about 1%. So if you think about metal price all in today of about $3,000 a ton, we may be able to drive a $30 per ton premium. And the reason for that is there is an excess supply of low carbon aluminum as it is defined today. We have an offering, our competitors have an offering. What we're seeing is that the demand is asymptoting up quickly, especially in places like Europe, where at some point the demand for low carbon aluminum will outstrip the supply. And at that point, there will be pricing that will allow producers to invest in low carbon aluminum so that they can actually get paid for producing low carbon aluminum. At which point, there will be a drive for ultra low carbon aluminum. Today, we make aluminum that's sub 5 tons per ton of carbon per ton of aluminum. Our customers are starting to ask for ultra low carbon aluminum. In order for us to make that step change, there's going to need to be a technology breakthrough. We've been working on that technology breakthrough with our partners, Rio Tinto, for quite a while. We're building some of those cells today, and we hope that in the next decade, we should be able to provide ultra low carbon aluminum.
And so what's happening in China today in terms of the demand picture, are you looking at that?
So if we bring it back to China, China has stated that they're going to hold to a 45 million metric ton cap. They are very high carbon emitting aluminum. So if we were ever to get to a situation, and Europe is taking the first steps here, where you would have a carbon cost associated with aluminum. Today, we make aluminum at 5 tons per ton. Your average Chinese production's at 15 tons per ton. So if you had a $50 carbon charge per ton of carbon, that gives a $500 advantage to low carbon metal. So over time, if the world were to transition to actually having a global price for carbon, it will steepen the cost curve and provide an incentive to invest in low carbon aluminum.
And Joe, just to add to that, I mean, when you take that step back and think about what happens next, obviously we have the Trump administration coming in Washington. We could have the possibility of a tariff war, but on the back of that, you have a new reality in China, and that means that there is perhaps going to be a more stable and lower growth going forward. How concerning should that be for those looking at the global economy today?
Well, I mean, look, the world is more than China. First of all, China obviously being the highest emission country in the world on CO2 emissions as a single country, so that economy needs to chip in. I believe ideally we would have a global carbon pricing, but unfortunately I don't see a path towards that, because you've got developing economies, you've got industrial countries, and the debate will go on and say, well, you polluted the world, you become rich and famous. Now, why should we pay for what you actually screwed up? I believe there's got to be, China, there's got to be an understanding on how China and the world can gradually reduce emission. In my experience, the last thing you want to do is trying to push China too hard too quickly, because they will close up. So that's, look, if you go from coal to gas, it's about 40%, about give or take 40% reduction on emission already, which is, 40% less is a lot. And then you may take the next step, and then another step. And technology will help produce, let's say, hydrogen-powered gas turbines as a next step. So I believe the world is well advised to try to provide a path from today till 2030, like the kingdom has done, or 2040. Energy and emission, it took us a long time to pollute the world, and it will take us a long time to clean it up. But don't push too hard too quickly, because people will close up and nothing gets done.
Yeah.
And His Royal Highness, by the way, today made a very important point, actually many points. But I think the single most important, he said, we need to work and think in ecosystems. And an ecosystem is a give or take. An ecosystem is go all the way from the beginning to the end. For example, if talking minerals today, right? Mineral Forum. If the world goes all electric on mobility, only mobility, cars, trucks, trains, we need 7 times the amount of mines as we have today. So what I'm trying to say is, if the world wants all electric, you need to look at the whole ecosystem from the beginning of the value chain all to the very end, and then see if we add it all up on how it compares. So practical, open, and then we'll need to have a path going forward. But without China, there's no way.
If you allow me just to close, maybe my opinion about green metals, I think we are forcing initiatives that's nonsense, killing the industry. Talking about green hydrogen, for example, no commercial unit can be set up and it's economic with a high size in order to provide for steel plants, for example. I think we need to look at it, each sector to deal with their green initiatives. Let the energy do their part, and let the steel or metals to do their part, like carbon capture, what they can do with the carbon capture, or what they can do with the, for example, waste handling and recycling. You can enforce these things which is under their control. But forcing all of these initiatives in the industry, it's a killer. And I think this needs to be looked at. And we will be always in the Royal Commission looking at these constraints and make sure that we don't kill the industries with initiatives that is really, really not feasible for them at current stage, maybe in the future, and then we will do it. Like, for example, energy efficiency program that we have. We went into stages to apply these targets on the industry, not to kill them. And now they reach to a high, really, standard of energy efficiency in their plants. Thank you.
Unfortunately, Your Excellency, our time is up. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you.